All right, welcome back to Save the Franchise. I believe we're on episode 8. Yep, episode 8 for real this time. I'm going to start getting this down, guys. I promise. But yeah, I got Austin here with me. We're ready for a really fun episode. Just had this idea this morning. I'm really excited to get into it. Austin, how you feeling?
Dude, super excited. This is gonna be cool. Something that I love diving into, something that we don't talk about, I feel like, enough.
Yeah.
So it should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, let's dive into the topic. We're just gonna go ahead and dig into this. What we really want to talk about today is quarterback contracts that make Super Bowl contention kind of unfeasible for teams, right? Quarterbacks that either are getting paid too much for how good they are, right, and it makes that Super Bowl run kind of near impossible, right? Or quarterbacks that just aren't good enough to be getting paid the big bucks. They need the mid-tier quarterback contract that for the most part doesn't really exist. So we're going to dig into what that should look like, what it currently looks like, and whether or not that's proper, a real evaluation of how much those quarterbacks impact winning and all that, and how rare they are. But yeah, we'll get into all that. Just a little bit of background. What kind of triggered this is last offseason, the Miami Dolphins gave Tua Tagovailoa quite a bit of money. And Tua's money is going to start hitting this year with 2 uncuttable years. Those cap hits are going to be at 13.8% of the cap and 19.1% of the cap. Pretty hefty sums. And by the way, we're just going to be talking about these cap figures in terms of percentage because with the cap exploding the way it is, those millions don't quite equate to each other near as well. Like we don't have a good frame in our mind for that. So I think it's better discourse to talk about percentage of the cap and how that impacts it. Just to provide our viewers who maybe don't have a good understanding of or a lot of experience dealing with cap percentage, what that looks like is the most anyone has ever won a Super Bowl with in terms of cap percentage was 17.2%, which Mahomes won the Super Bowl in 2022 was 17.2%. And then he won it again in 2023 with 16.5%. But those are the highest numbers anyone's ever won the Super Bowl with. I believe the next highest is around 13.5 to 14-ish percent of the cap. So once you start getting 15 plus percent of the cap, it becomes rarefied air. There's not many types of quarterbacks and people who can overcome that. You have any thoughts on this or any extra context you think our audience could use, Austin?
No, I mean it's a good way of, or it's a good point to show that usually these starting quarterbacks have a lower cap percentage. Mahomes is kind of a unicorn in a lot of different respects, but people always talk about how Tom Brady was always taking pay cuts and in later years, we've talked about how some guys were on like smaller contracts and were able to win Super Bowls at the end of their career without having a big cap cut. So it's a huge thing to be able to get your money, especially if it's a player that like got his money early in his career and kind of can take a little bit less and win a couple more championships. But just in general, to have a smaller percentage, be able to bring more guys in. And a lot of times, these QBs aren't actually as good as they need to be hitting these cap percentages, which is something we're definitely going to jump into here.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. A lot of these quarterbacks end up taking less to manage that. But yeah, and even those 2 years that Mahomes won the cap hit like that, like it's not like those teams were world beaters. I mean, those were kind of teams that
Mhm.
relied on a lot of rookie talent. I mean, that 2022 team when he had the 17.2% cap hit. I mean, they were starting in the Super Bowl. I believe they were starting 5 rookies in the secondary. Like that was that 20 that draft class for that Super Bowl run was really good. I mean, you had Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, several startable pieces like Brian Cook, Jalen Watson, and so I mean, it takes a lot of help, and even then, that team wasn't that great, So it's not like when we say with really really good quarterback play, you can go do it with 17.2%, 16.5%. You're not creating like a juggernaut of a team probably with that sort of percentage, unless if you hit everything right. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about the big three a little bit. Austin and I have kind of looked at it. We've kind of agreed. There's a big three here. There's a group of quarterbacks who unquestionably don't get paid their value, right? And so this is kind of the other side of the coin of like these guys are actively boosting their teams by making less than what they're worth, or being significantly better value contracts than other quarterbacks. And those big three are Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. And so I just kind of think, let me know what you think about this, Austin, but I just think it's kind of a market inefficiency. The way the NFL operates, it's more about rarity than it is about true player ability. And so as a result, the best of the best, the cream of the crop, world-beating quarterbacks, the market value does not get pushed as high as it should relative to the other quarterbacks. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you'll have some of these quarterbacks that come around and they'll break some records. But these guys like Mahomes, Allen, and Lamar, like they should be making double what most of these other quarterbacks are making, whereas it's usually kind of in that same area. And that's for a couple reasons. One of which you noted on. The first is just the cap in general. It's not like a team can go out and pay their quarterback 100% of their cap. They can only really, hit. I mean, once you're hitting like 20%, that's going to be, we haven't really seen that. And that's where you're really going to get in trouble. You got to try to stay closer down to 10 to be able to have some other guys. So that's one reason why there's just a natural, limit on how much we can pay these guys. And then the other reason everyone kind of stays around the same level is that rarity that you mentioned. So you have a team that finally has been terrible, has had a bunch of draft picks, but isn't hitting on anything. They finally get their guy, their quarterback. And they're like, all right, we got to pay this guy. And so this guy's saying like, oh, I'm the greatest quarterback ever. You need to pay me what Mahomes is getting over there in Kansas City. You need to pay me what Allen's getting up in Buffalo. And so they pay these guys just so that they stay in town, and because that has become their lifeblood. But they're not actually as good as Mahomes, as Allen, as Lamar. They're not actually going to be able to take a bunch of rookies, put them on their back, and carry them to the Super Bowl like Mahomes can. And so that's kind of like the problem, and that's really what leads us into a lot of these contracts we're going to be diving into here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I think that's the point of I think the conclusion I've kind of arrived at when I look at these numbers and the way the NFL evaluates how much these quarterbacks are worth is that the market price is driven more by the desire to not lose the quarterback and not be left out in the cold without one than it is about, like I said, how good the quarterback actually is, how much of a chance the quarterback actually gives you at taking a run at the Super Bowl. And it's because there are teams out there waiting that are so desperate to solve their quarterback situation, even if it's a significant overpay, that you can't let, you don't have a ton of leverage with a Trevor Lawrence hitting free agency, right? Like if you let him go hit free agency, he's probably going to get paid like $65 million a year because it's going to be a bidding war, and some team is going to just be that desperate to get their hands on a quarterback they know has some level of close to top 10 talent, or something in that area. And part of that reason is that NFL teams, not all the decisions are made by the owners. They're made by people who can be fired, right? And so it's, they're fighting for their jobs, and one of the easiest way to kind of keep your job around is have a good quarterback in the building. If you don't have one, it's a scary place to be. Just ask the Giants.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I feel bad for that guy Dable up there because I feel like he's a great coach, but Daniel Jones was not it. We'll see if the crew they've brought over can be a solution for him, but I don't have high hopes. So we'll see for him.
Well, yeah, and I think the worst thing for Dable and company has been that one, they kind of had Jones forced onto them. I'm pretty sure that contract was not really their choice. And then two, I think they've really, really tried and really, really gone and tried to go to the well multiple times and grab quarterbacks in various places, but they haven't been able to make it work. I mean, they tried to trade up for Jaden Daniels or Drake May. They couldn't get to them. They tried to go get Matt Stafford this offseason. They couldn't get him. Like, they've tried really hard and it hasn't worked out. And so they just kind of had to go with this plan this offseason. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into some of these quarterbacks we really want to talk about. I think the first one we have is kind of the obvious one, so we want to get it out of the way. This is the big one. This is the guy, the top paid quarterback in the NFL. Austin, do you think Dak Prescott justifies his $60 million APY contract?
No, absolutely not. I mean, that is something that, he's being paid higher than all these other guys that have taken their teams way further. And I don't think we'll ever forget the Cowboys getting the number one seed and then instantly crashing out. That early year, like Zeke rookie year, all that stuff is like, man, like that was the best the Cowboys have done since then. And they haven't even been, that wasn't enough. And they haven't even been able to get back to there. And so it's like, oh my goodness, it's that thing that we talked about where it's like he's their guy. Like he's had big moments and he's sort of proven himself to the franchise in their eyes. And so they're like, all right, we got to pay him, and this is what the price is right now. So that's why he gets the money, but he's just not worth it. He's not good enough, in my opinion. And I don't feel like I'm going out on a limb to say that because we've had numerous seasons to see it. He's not bad. He's an NFL quarterback, but he shouldn't be paid what he is.
Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely not worth the contract. And we'll get into. I'm going to get into a couple of reasons why the contract's that bad in a minute here. There's very specific reasons for why it's ended up that way, but I think it's instructive for other teams. Like, this is how not to manage things, right? But for me to address the Dak Prescott thing a little bit, I want to be clear. I like Dak Prescott. Like, I think he's a top 10 quarterback. He's in that back end of the top 10. He's really good at certain things. One of the better pocket passing quarterbacks, but he plays aggressively out of the pocket, which is rare for some of these guys who are trying to learn how to be really good pocket passing quarterbacks, right? He'll kind of throw things with abandon and give his receivers chances. But like he needs to manage the team and drive the team, not pull the team, right? Like he guides the team, he doesn't pull them. There's a difference, and so yeah, when you look at him, I'm fine with paying him a lot of money. It needs to be a lot less than guys like Mahomes and Allen, who are just on another planet compared to the in terms of impact on the team. I mean, it just Dak doesn't solve problems and create problems for the defense like those types of quarterbacks do. I mean, when you really think about it, Austin, I mean, if I said you could have Patrick Mahomes or you could have Dak Prescott, and if you pick Dak Prescott, you can also get a $20 million a year player with him. So that's probably, in today's market, that's like a corner one. So that's like you could have him with the guy in Chicago, or probably Sauce is going to land around that 20 mark. Let's even say you could have him with Patrick Surtain. Do you think that's worth it? Like, would you take Dak Prescott and Patrick Surtain over Patrick Mahomes?
I mean, there's no way. Like, it's enticing just because Sertan is who he is, but you're not gonna pass up Patrick Mahomes. We've seen what he can do with just about anyone. Again, not to keep comparing him to Tom Brady, who is still the GOAT. Tom Brady was always talked about as the guy that could do it with anyone. You just throw some guys out there, some JV high school wide receivers, and he can probably win a Super Bowl. Mahomes has kind of been able to do a similar thing. Granted, he's always had Andy Reid's offensive mind. He's had Kelsey out there. They've been bolstering the offensive line. Obviously you can't win without anything, but it's Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to pass that up, even if you are getting some other guys, because again, especially if you're on a team like the Chiefs, they can draft well enough that they can just go get a cheaper off market Patrick Surtain, who can be good enough to pair with how good Mahomes is on offense.
Yeah. So I mean that's just kind of where we stand, like on in terms of Dak. He can't be getting paid this much money. You can't put together a good enough team. What this does is when you have these quarterbacks, getting paid near these top 3 alien type guys, like they need things to surround them in perfect ways, and so that they need really good surrounding casts. And so if you're gonna be, kind of pulled down by that, anchored down by that same sort of big contract that the big 3 guys have, well, you need to be drafting like ridiculously well to create cost controlled talent in some other part of the team in order to make that feasible, right? Because it's easy for the rookie contract quarterbacks who are at that sort of Dak Prescott level to kind of compete with Mahomes and Allen and Lamar. I shouldn't say easy, but like it's much simpler, right? Because you can both draft well and you can pay a couple other free agent guys, a couple other real second contracts to other players to help be a part of that supporting cast and give them a leg up on those ultra uber talented quarterbacks, right?
Mhm.
And especially when these uber talented quarterbacks are surrounded with really good coaches, it's just, yeah. There's you need to find ways to give your quarterback a leg up if you have one of those guys, and the pathways become all the more limited when you pay them contracts like this. So that's really why we're talking about it. Any more on Dak Prescott, or should we kick it on to the next guy?
No, I think we really covered it. And the last thing that I was gonna say is like I feel like in his rookie year, the reason that they were able to get that far is because they weren't having to pay him. They weren't having to pay, or I don't know if it was his rookie year, but on his rookie contract, and then also Zeke on his rookie contract. So you had all these guys. You had like an older, like Des Bryant that was helping him out on a cheap contract. So you had like some cheap contracts that then they were able to go out and pay some other big guys.
Right.
And so that's really why they were able to do that. But now in these later years, when they've been dumping all their money to Dak, and they've been rolling out not a lot of talent. I mean, they were able to, they were able to get CeeDee Lamb in the draft, and that was a great pick. But now they're starting to have to, pay him too. And so like there wasn't a lot. They haven't had a lot outside of those two in the last few years on offense, and we've really seen it. They've struggled to play well when they really need to. When they have 80 yards to go and they can just chuck it to CeeDee Lamb, like great, they've been super explosive. But when it really comes down to like, game on the line, you're down close to the 30, 20-yard line, they just haven't been able to you know, live up to that or kind of rise to that occasion. And so that's kind of what you get when you're paying two guys all that money.
Right. And I guess, sorry, the last thing I want to talk about with Dak as well is just to be clear, the Cowboys kind of slotted themselves into a uniquely terrible situation with this because they just kept waiting until Dak was about to hit free agency to extend the contract. So they give him practically all the leverage of hitting free agency and having that bidding war and having to just put the full money out there and bring him back. And so that's how you end up with cap percentages. Last year he was at 17.2% of the cap. And this year he's at 16.5. Next year he's at 25.1, and you can't cut that. I mean it'd be too much to cut. And then he's at 22% of the cap the next year. I mean, you're just so locked in a ridiculous way that you can't make that work with a player like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean we opened up the show with me saying that anything over 20% is just not going to work, and you're well over 20% here.
Right. So yeah, let's go ahead and move this on. Let's talk about Jordan Love. Okay, so Jordan Love got this contract at the end of year 3. They're looking. Oh, I'm sorry. Was it at the end of year 4 or at the end of year 3? Do you know?
Year 3.
Okay.
I think.
Well, I don't know if that's sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. When did he? No, he got it after year 4, I think.
It was 4. Dang, okay.
I think because
I forget how long that dude's been in the NFL.
He got it last year, so he'd played 20, 21, 22, 23. Yeah, so he had played out his rookie contract.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what he was. He was okay. So he was going into his 5th year option.
Okay.
So he got it after year 4. Last year was his 5th year option. Okay, they went ahead and extended him that offseason, which is wise. If you're going to pay him then. Don't wait, right? Mm-hmm. Like we talked about with Dak. But they paid a guy who had played like 8 games, or had a really good a good 8-game stretch. Had only played like 1 season, and so there was a lot of unknown there. And so I get that this is one of those contracts I think really got leveraged by we don't know if we love Jordan Love that much to pay him a top QB contract, but we know we definitely don't want to deal with having a random quarterback or trying to figure it out, or doing the quarterback carousel thing or getting some random veteran like a Russell Wilson type now, And so that was clearly like what that decision was to me, and they're just like really hoping and praying this is going to work out right? I don't know. Do you think Jordan Love is worth this contract, Austin?
I mean, it's so interesting, right? Because I was actually just up in Wisconsin, and there's all the Jordan Love jerseys, and everyone's talking about Jordan Love, and they're pretty excited about him. And he's had some good games, and took him to the playoffs last year, and played fairly well. Um, But it's tough to say because you could say that about a ton of quarterbacks in the NFL that have had some early success and just kind of um, sputtered out. Um, but honestly, like considering everything you said about, the carousel and how difficult it is to find success in the draft and really hit on quarterbacks, and also that idea that to even get your quarterback of the future in the draft, you really have to be like, top five. I guess the Chiefs were able to get Mahomes at what 10, and that's because it was a packed draft and they were able to trade up that far. But even then, that took some effort, and it's not easy. You really have to be one of the worst teams, and the Packers never want to be one of the worst teams. They always want to be towards the top. So they don't. I don't think they ever envisioned themselves being in the realm to take their quarterback. I mean, I think Love himself was a second or third rounder, was he not?
Mm-hmm.
And
No,
so
he was a back end of the first rounder. That's why they got that.
back into the first round.
Yeah,
Okay.
they picked him 26th overall. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So still, they're not taking these guys up at the top, and no one wants to deal with this QB carousel like you mentioned. And so to just go out and pay him, they didn't, they had gotten rid of Devontae Adams, and they had gone out and went and got Josh Jacobs, but other than that, didn't have a bunch of other people that they were expecting to shell out a bunch of money for. And so I really see it as them saying like you said, like, hey, he's in the building, this is our guy, let's keep him here. I don't think it was a terrible decision. But you definitely do wonder if it was too much too soon, because one bad season could roll into another bad season, and sure enough, they're cutting him, and then we have a Daniel Jones situation.
Yeah. So basically, it doesn't become comfortable to cut him until approaching the 2028 season. If they cut him in that off season, approaching that 2028 season, there'll be about $16 million in dead cap, but that's totally stomachable. Like if he needs to go, it's fine. You could cut him for 33 million dead in approaching 2027, but that starts to get icky and uncomfortable. Like you're only doing that if you're about to hit the reset on the team and really kind of really tear it down and retool and go through things and kind of be bad for a year or two. So unless if you're going to work some sort of Sean Payton Broncos voodoo magic, like I still don't understand how they did that with the constraints of the Russell Wilson cap. I'm feeling that sometime down the road the Broncos are going to be the Saints now, and look like that. I'm going to have to dig into their cap and see how that looks. But yeah, anyways, that's a tangent. But you're definitely locked in for this year and next year at 10% and 12.2% of the cap. And if things aren't exploding or super problematic or anything, you're paying him 14.2% of the cap, projected cap in 2027. So those numbers are not terrible, right? Like that keeps you a decent chunk under what those really difficult Mahomes years were. But yeah, I think you need to get really high level quarterback play out of him to make that work, or you need to have really killer you need to have really killer cost controlled talent. Like you either need to be picking up super value free agents or you need to be drafting super well. So like if Matthew Golden comes out here, by the way, go watch the Matthew Golden video that Tyler and I had. But no, if Matthew Golden can kind of be like a superstar from the jump, and then maybe another one of the draft picks hits, now we can start talking. Like we're dealing with some fire here. Like we can cook and make this work. But I think they need to hit on some guys like that for him to be able to have the juice to go. I mean, this is a guy who hasn't even really made a real playoff run yet. I mean, so that's kind of what I'm looking at with this contract, and where I think he currently sits from a skill point of view. I don't know how much development there is left in the tank there.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, you hit all the points there. I feel like you're right that we kind of are getting um, probably what we're gonna get with Love. He spent all that time behind Rodgers, and he's not a rookie. He really is probably in full career form right now. The Packers are just kind of hoping and praying he doesn't have any sort of regression. He kind of came out and had these really good past few years. Hopefully he doesn't have some sort of like CJ Stroud type drop in this next year, because if he comes out and he's throws a stinker this year, and then they're thinking, oh man, this might not be our guy. They're locked in for, like you said, at least 2 more years.
Right.
And like we said, then you're getting into that Daniel Jones situation where you're just locked into bad QB play and can't bring anyone else in either, because you're
Right.
paying him all the money. So it just takes once you hit that, once you kind of fall in that well, it takes you a second to even be able to rebuild.
Right. Yeah. And if there are any Packers fans listening to this in disgust, I apologize. But like, think about this: the dude's been in the league for like he's accrued 5 seasons. I mean, think about where you were 5 years ago. I, I mean, he's had a lot of time to learn and grow. Like, I don't think the development will be that much more significant. I think that's a very realistic thing to say. So, yeah, let's kick it on to Kyler Murray. This is a really interesting one. Kyler's been a really up and down quarterback. He's had like streaks where he lights the league on fire, at least from a fantasy perspective. But even from a performance perspective, I mean, I think it was 2 years ago. He comes out weeks 1 through 9 and is just like they're a top 3 offense and they're blowing people to pieces and it's looking great. And then things go down for a while. And it's like, I don't know if it's just the 2X weekends or if it's other stuff that he's dealing with, but there's inconsistency in his play. So let's real quick. Let me go through the numbers, and then Austin, you tell me if he's worth this contract. So last year he got 18.4% of the cap. That's kind of crazy. I don't think people know how much he's getting paid. 14.8% is what he's slated to make this year. 18% this season, and then that next season in 2027 will be, so that's 2 seasons from now. He'll be at 14% of the cap, but they could cut him that year. They could get out of that. So they're really only locked in through that 18% year next year. What do you think about this contract?
Yeah, I mean, when we were looking into the contracts that we wanted to talk about on this episode, I think this one surprised both of us. I don't think either of us realized how much exactly Kyler Murray is getting paid down there. Like you said, he's had some great years, but this just seems astronomical for a guy that has not had all that much success. I mean, I had him in fantasy a few years. He could light up the fantasy board, but we really haven't seen that many big time wins from Kyler Murray. And there was all that drama not too long ago about him playing Call of Duty and was he really focused up? And then he got the big contract. And so I think it is surprising, but again, it comes down to that idea that we are talking about is when you have this big explosive guy, the last thing they want to do is try to be like, however many years before they got him, because it was a little while that they were cycling through quarterbacks, they're thinking back to that and they're like, oh man, if Murray isn't our guy, like we don't want to go right back to that right now. So we're just gonna hold on for the long haul, and this is what he costs, and we're gonna pay it. And so again, I'm not saying that Murray is worth zero, but to be paying him, like we said last year, 18.4%. They didn't go very far on that. 14.8, a little better this year, but 18% next year. They got some guys on that roster that are going to be wanting some money soon. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. And so it's like, man, that is just a huge hit. You're really getting close to 20% next year. And it's like, for what? Maybe he takes them all the way to the playoffs this year and they get a couple wins and you're thinking like, okay, man, Kyler Murray is an elite level quarterback, and we start talking about him in that big three conversation. But it's like, where we stand, it's not like he's anywhere near that. And so there's no reason he should be making more than Mahomes when, he's not going to be able to carry a team that's only getting, what's left of that cap percentage.
Yeah, so I mean, he's made it to the playoffs one time.
Yeah.
In that one game, they got blown out by the Rams. It was a 23-point loss, and where he threw 2 picks. You don't have postseason appearances to hang your hat on. You don't have postseason success to hang your hat on. He's 28. He's played 6 seasons, right? So the growth's probably not that much better. In honestly, we're probably getting pretty close to where he's going to start declining. I'm not saying rapidly. I'm not saying necessarily falling off a cliff, but he's a short, quick mover, and that's where a lot of his value is derived from. I mean, the decline could easily start this year. That can happen with 28 plus guys that move like that are the quick twitch type guys. And so yeah, I'd be worried. And he hasn't exactly been the healthiest guy throughout his career, so it's not a good look. I don't think this contract is anywhere near feasible to win a Super Bowl especially like the cost controlled talent on the roster is Paris Johnson and Marvin Harrison Jr. And Paris Johnson's really good. They're not really utilizing the O-line to a great success in the passing game, though. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is a terrible mesh with Kyler Murray, I think. In retrospect, it seems so clear. I don't want to act like I thought this during that draft, but in retrospect, it seems so clear that he would have been better off with Malik Neighbors than Marvin Harrison Jr. Not from a skill perspective, but literally from a how do they play perspective, because he does not utilize Marvin Harrison Jr. across the field on intermediate and deep dig routes and crossing routes very well at all, unless if it's a boot play action. And so I know you were talking about, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy you would potentially have to pay, but honestly, when I look at these next 3 years, he's still cost controlled. He would be one of the guys I'd be like, well, this could save you from that contract. You get really explosive, high level play from guys like that on rookie contracts, and you can kind of save yourself from this contract a little bit and create value elsewhere, even though it's really difficult. But the thing is, I don't think they can maximize him because of the way that those two don't mesh together, really. So this Kyler Murray contract, it does not work in my opinion. So, any last thoughts on Kyler Murray? Should we move on?
No, I think we hit it.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk Trevor Lawrence. So this is a little bit of an interesting one, right? So real quick, we got this year he's making 5.7. Next year he's making 8.1, and the year after that he's making 11.3. And so this is one of those contracts. It's listed up there. If you go look it over the cap, I want to caution people a little bit. If you go look it over the cap and you sort by average per year, he's going to be second on the list with $55 million per year, making the same as Jordan Love, same as Josh Allen, same as Joe Burrow. In reality, the way the Jags have kind of fitted out these cap hits is it's going to get spread. And so they've moved a lot of these cap hits along. It's pushed down the road. And so the years where he's actually been playing these next 3 years, where we think this window might be opening up with Liam Cohen, those cap hits are actually pretty low. I mean, you're only getting up to 11.3 2 years from now. So that's pretty nice. What do you think about the contract?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst. It's not these massive percentages that we've seen from these last few guys, but I still view it as something that was a little too early. Like, we had that one big playoff win where they came back against the Chargers, but even then, for that win, they had to do something that we've hardly ever seen happen in the NFL. So it's not like Trevor Lawrence is exactly some big Super Bowl winner either. And so to me, it still seems like they're maybe just throwing money at the fan a little bit too early. But again, they feel like they've got their guy. They've invested a lot of time and energy into him, and they've started to build a team around him, and they're going to say, all right, this is our guy. And I think they're willing to put the money into it. And if it doesn't work out, they'll say, all right, we got this one wrong, and they'll rebuild the team and restart. And so I think that's how they justify the money. And again, it's a lot better. Like you said, 5.7, 8.1, 11.3. So those aren't terrible numbers. You can still build a team around that. So for this one, I don't hate it, but it definitely could end up being, some wasted money, because there's no way they're getting out of these contracts until, even the buyout in 2028 is pretty high. So they're locked into Trevor Lawrence for a little while if it doesn't work out. So it's not even necessarily the percentage each year. It's like how long you're locked into this guy, just in terms of years. And so if Lawrence doesn't work out, they're gonna have to bring someone else in if they want to win, if they decide, all right, this isn't our guy, but they're still having to pay him. And maybe they're able to pawn him off to another team, but they're still gonna be taking some of that hit. So that's what I kind of think about it. If he ends up being super great and then it works out, if not, that's when they get themselves into some trouble.
Yeah, so I think I'm a little bit more bullish on this. I think, one, I'm a little bit more bullish on how good Trevor Lawrence is. I think he's been severely sabotaged. I'm not saying he's elite, nothing like that, but I think in proper surroundings, I think he's playing more like a top, like a top 6, top 7, top 8 type quarterback, closer to that, and sort of in that niche. these past few years if he's kind of really in the right situation. And I think hopefully we're going to see that this year. I still have some question marks about the O-line, but that's something moving forward that we can do. This contract's interesting, right? Because they put a bunch of money down the road in kind of very cuttable years, but there's a $78 million cap hit in 2029 and a $74 million cap hit in 2030, right? There's not really any guaranteed money in there. Maybe like $7 million, right? That you would actually be dealing with cutting him. And so, the deal there is, they kind of handed him a bunch of extra leverage in terms of negotiating down the line for a future extension, for a third contract, but they kind of got lower numbers, and I think that works out pretty nice. I think you can definitely work with 5.7 and 8.1 this year in a pretty nice way. I mean, I think that gives you the flexibility to kind of utilize free agency to patch, a big hole or two, and I think it just makes that's enough that you've got a pretty good edge on some of those big contracts, that if Trevor Lawrence can start playing closer to the elite guys, that definitely gives you the leverage there. So I'm kind of bullish on this. I like how this works out. I don't think this is a sort of Tua contract where it's team wrecking or anything.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at the gameplay between Murray and Lawrence, like it's not like there's a huge difference in success. They both went to the playoffs, and Lawrence even has more wins. Yet his contract is way more team friendly. So this is more like in that realm that you feel like a team wants to be close to versus a guy like Murray and just running up the paycheck for what.
Right. Okay. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy got paid this summer. Nice juicy contract. $265 million deal over 5 years. So how does that break down? It looks something like this. So this year they kept the cap number nice and low, as you would expect. 2.7% of the cap. So this is the last year of his rookie deal. So they really kept it low. I think they added a little bit of new money on top of it with the signing bonus, but that was about it. So caps at 2.7% this year, very much within rookie. That's that's better than some of the number. I think that's better than the number one contract, by quite a bit. So that's nice. The 2026 season, you got 8.4% of the cap. The 2027 season, 9.9% of the cap. And then those cap hits jump up a little bit, but they're cuttable. So I'm guessing he'll play these 3 years, and then you're gonna be looking at another contract extension or kind of something to alter those years. So what we're really looking at him playing is pretty reasonable in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I actually really like this contract. I feel like there's a ton of Brock Purdy hate that goes around, but I've always really respected what he's been able to do in the NFL. I mean, it's hard to play in the NFL. It's hard to complete the passes he completes, and so what if he has these crazy offensive weapons running around? And I know there's something to be said about the offensive line and also having the rushing attack that they've been able to turn to in Christian McCaffrey as of late. But still, I think Brock Purdy is a good NFL quarterback, and I think he's an NFL quarterback that is worth this money. And I mean, I think he's better than Lawrence. I can confidently say that. And these hits are better than what we were seeing from Lawrence. 8.4, 9.9. I mean, okay, you can look at it in one sense and say, all right, he's 153rd, maybe even 122nd of the team, and you're giving him a tenth of the money. That makes a ton of sense when it comes down to the quarterback. Like, if you're investing a tenth of your money in your quarterback and you still have like 90% to go everywhere else, I think that's plenty. I mean, we've seen them obviously succeed on his rookie contract. That's a huge benefit to have, and it's not like this is a huge jump up from this. They have their guy. They gave him his money. He's going to be around for a while, and they can continue to build around him. I think that he still has some maturing and development that he could undergo. You were kind of saying that Love might have hit his cap. I think Purdy has further that he can go. I think he's going to continue to get better. I think the new guys that they bring in, that cast is kind of changing. I think he's going to continue to get better, and I think that contract is going to really work out for them.
Yeah, I think the big question mark for Purdy is like the skills are a little bit behind some of these other quarterbacks. Like, I just want to see him either take an level up either in terms of the high leverage outside the number throws, or beating pressure. And if he can figure out one of those two things and kind of absolve that as a weakness in his game, and just have one of those be the weakness, then I think you're looking at Jared Goff basically playing quarterback for the Niners on what is a better deal, I think, than Jared Goff. I think you can make that work for sure. I just think right now he's lagging behind some of those other guys who don't really have the alien traits or some of these really high level arms or anything like that, like Jordan Love. And so I think he just needs a little bit more something to compensate for that. And then you're doing pretty good. Like, that's a pretty good contract to work with and make things happen with. You still can't compare to the value of the big three, but it's plenty good to be highly competitive, I think. So,
yeah.
All right. Moving on.
Cool. Yeah.
Let's talk Matt Stafford. So this one's kind of an interesting one. They signed a new extension, a new contract this offseason. Kind of figured some things out there in Los Angeles. He's sticking there the next 2 years. The dead money is too high, really, to move on from him and compete the way Sean McVay wants to compete. So he's playing another 2 years in Los Angeles, and then it's probably over and done with. So we're looking at 16.9% this year and 16.3% this year. What do you think about this pretty hefty contract?
It's a pretty big contract for a pretty old guy, in my opinion. And we've seen a lot of success out of Matthew Stafford. I mean, just the talent that he always had in Detroit, and they're able to bring that out to LA and really use it to the highest extent. And they were able to get their Lombardi, and we saw what they kind of poured into that. And they kind of paid the price in draft picks. And we saw the Rams kind of take a downtick there for a second, but they kind of have recovered and stayed pretty competitive despite that. And so I think that they want to keep that rolling, and this is the price to keep Stafford in the building and kind of keep the same game plan that they have going for a few more years. Maybe they see it as, they view their window as having a few more years. Maybe they can stick another Lombardi in there. But I think it's a little bit too much money. The real question is, was it the best decision for them to make? I don't know if I can necessarily say if I was in their shoes, I'd go a different direction, because again, I don't think they're ready to just give up on this. I think in their minds, if they pour a little bit more money into Stafford, a little bit more money in these next 2 years, and it fizzles out and it doesn't lead to a Super Bowl, they're still going to be a huge high market team. They're still going to make a ton of money, and everyone's still going to go home happy. And I don't think that they're going to see it as a huge problem. Whereas I think if they just jump ship and let Stafford go now, maybe they weren't ready. Maybe they don't have a succession plan yet. So I think it is objectively a little too much. Like you said, 16.9 this year, 16.3 next year. It's high. That's getting close to that realm where you don't really want to be. And they haven't had a ton of draft picks. We don't see a ton of young talent. Kyron Williams is an excellent young talent. I guess I'm going to correct myself because Puka Nacua as well.
So I'm going to disagree.
Yeah. So I'm actually totally wrong, because I'm remembering now all these draft picks they've had. They've had some really big defensive guys. So maybe I'm totally wrong and kind of switching a little bit. So I'm gonna let you take over, because I know you're excited to talk about this.
Yeah. So this is kind of my case, because you look at those cap hit numbers and you're like, that's scary. That's not where we want to live. This is not like Stafford's really good. He's played. You could argue for sure that he's played closer to the big three than a lot of these other guys we've been talking about for sure. If you had to guess, how many other players do you think are slated to make $20 million plus either in 2025 or 2026 in either year on the Rams?
Dude, I can't think of any.
That's the answer. 0.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, they're not paying a ton of other people, because they would have had to pay Cup. They let him walk. So I guess that's part of their plan. Like Stafford is McVay, Stafford, and these rookies are the plan, and that's the window, I guess.
So so outside of Matt Stafford, their next highest paid guy each of these next 2 seasons is Kevin Dotson, their right guard at about $18 million a year. Okay, in terms of cap hit. And then it's Devontae Adams at 12 And, oh, my bad. Okay, I'm sorry. Devontae Adams does actually jump up to 28 next year. But I bet, well, you can cut him for about half the money. So if it gets really dire straits there, you can make up 14 back. But anyways, yeah, there's a ton of young talent on this team. So I kind of think this is a very outlier case where they got to look at all this talent they have on rookie contracts. They said, we can sign Stafford. We can dictate the deal now. We can afford this. There's not another quarterback who can utilize this team nearly as well available, right? And so let's pay it. Let's do it. And I mean, yeah, you've just got some ridiculous value. I mean, Kyron Williams is okay value. He's making 5.4. I think they even got some good free agent value, like giving Poona Ford 5 against the cap. Mm-hmm. That's a great guy who's going to help with their run stuffing. But you've got Cameron Curl making under 5, Kobe Durant making under 5, Jared Verse is making under 4. And then, yeah, you've got guys like Braden Fisk making 2. And David Quessenberry making 1.3. Blake Corms making 1.3. Back up on the running back there. Cameron Kitchens has been really good. You're paying him 1.2. Akella Witherspoon, you're paying 1.2. Like, these are crazy. Like, the overall value, and then Puka Nacua at $1 million a year is just, you're cutting so many corners on these guys that are playing so well on their rookie deals. This is what we're kind of talking about, where the quarterback contract is not the end-all be-all. It's just that it's really hard to do something like this and have this kind of outstanding extra value outside of a big quarterback, or a quarterback contract being way less than it should be. Like, it's hard to have all these different pieces representing a cumulative value and not have any of those big bloated free agent contracts where you're like, oops, we paid someone we really wanted to bring them in the building and they just weren't really worth it. It's really hard to do that, but the Rams kind of break a lot of those rules in some scenarios. So, yeah, I think this is a kind of unique outlier case that should not inform how teams do things, but it's just one of those scenarios where when you get to look at your books and you're like, you get to reevaluate and do the quarterback contract at that particular moment, that's what you can do,
Yeah. No, and it works out super well. And it goes back to something that we were talking about in some of our previous episodes, just about how important ownership is. I mean, to have these draft picks and to draft so well, even with the low amount of draft capital that they've had. I mean, all these guys have been later rounds. It's not like, I think Kyron Williams, I think it was 3rd round.
I believe so, yeah.
And Nacua was what, 5th round?
5th round, yep.
And so it's like, oh my gosh, you're able to get this kind of value with like no 1st and 2nd round picks. That works out great. And so not only do you need to have your quarterback and pay him, intelligently, but you also need to have a lot of rookie talent that, like you said, you can just cut a bunch of corners on. And then it doesn't really matter what you pay your quarterback as long as he's your guy and can succeed with what you've put around him.
Right. I mean, Jared Verse is already playing well enough that he should be making $20 million a year. So that's an extra. That's $17 million you're saving based off what the team's talent looks like, right? Just from him. You want to add in Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua's market value on this right now is probably nearing 30. I mean, he's near top 5 or top 5 wide receiver in the game, depending on who you ask. And so you're probably looking at about $30 million a year. So you're saving $29 million there. When you can save that much from just 2 players, and then you got a bunch of other value created. I mean, those ridiculous draft hits can kind of simulate the value of a rookie quarterback contract, Yeah. So, this is kind of a unique scenario. That's really, really interesting to look at. I would say the one kind of mine with it, the one kind of potential pitfall with this is that we're assuming that Matt Stafford's going to be healthy and not decline exceedingly, which is not necessarily a safe assumption given that he's 37. I mean, he's dealt with some injuries. You could absolutely land in a place where you're a little bit screwed over by him getting hurt, and you're just wasting some of this rookie value from those players. But overall, I think it was the right dice roll to make because you need some level of quarterback to go win the chip, and so this is how they're going to have to play it. Honestly, I think they could have been a little bit more aggressive if they wanted to, but I think they're trying to find a way to segue off of him with some sort of quarterback in the next couple of years. So they could have been more aggressive these 2 years, though. All right. We good to go to Jared Goff?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the guy Matt Stafford got traded for, or rather, the guy that was traded for Matt Stafford. So Jared Goff here. So last year made 10.6% of the cap, fell short in the divisional round of the playoffs. Made 10.7 is going to make 10.7% of the cap this year, and then next year he's going to make 23.6% of the cap. And then the year after that, he's making 17.6. And so I think you're definitely looking at some sort of extension or restructuring or moving around of the money after this year. I would be shocked if he plays on that 23.6% of the cap next year. But that is how the contract currently stands, and that does give him leverage. Like that, it's not like the Lions are going to wave a magic wand and make that money go away. It's just going to get moved, and used as leverage for Jared Goff to kind of create more guaranteed money down the line. So what do you think about this contract? Do you think the Lions, with all their recent team building, can handle these sort of cap hits, or do you think this is getting too big for their britches?
So 10.6 and 10.7, perfectly manageable. 23.6 is kind of scary to see. But you got to think about the Lions. They are very similar to what we just talked about with the Rams, with a lot of good rookie talent. You got Amon-Ra on a rookie deal for quite a bit of time. You got Jahmyr Gibbs on a rookie deal for quite a bit of time. They got some defenders that they've been drafting, and I mean, it's not like they had an elite level defense last year, but it was sufficient. I mean, they've had a really good team out there. Obviously, didn't have the playoff success that they were hoping for, but I like this Lions team. They were good last year. I think they're going to be good this year. You're just, it just kind of makes you wonder whether or not 23.6 is a little sharp next year. So I think for that to work out, they really need these. They need the rookies that have been playing well to continue to play well. They need the rookies that they've drafted recently to start to step it up, and they need to really hit in this year and this year's draft and next year's draft. Maybe like you kind of mentioned before, maybe they get some cheap free agent talent that they're able to bring in. But 23.6 does not leave you with a lot of wiggle room. So again, if you have any big injuries, if he goes down, if Gibbs goes down, you're kind of in trouble. So they're out on a limb, but sometimes that's kind of what it takes to win in the NFL. Again, you saw the deal that the Rams went and did to get Stafford and put together that Super Bowl team, and it worked out great. And it sort of cost them, but with good ownership, with good draft picks, it really didn't end up costing them in the long run. So I don't think it's terrible, but I think it puts them in somewhat of a precarious, not foolproof situation. What would you say about it?
So let's play the Rams game again, because I think they go the other side of it.
Okay.
Let me put it this way. In 2026, the year that big cap number comes out, $69.6 million against the cap is what Jared Goff's going to cost him at that 22 mark, what was it? 23.6% of the cap. How many players, including Jared Goff, do you think are getting paid or going to hit against the cap for 15 or more million dollars that year?
15 or more. I'm going to count 2. More. All right, what's the damage? Where are we?
We're at 9 players.
Are we seriously?
It's
Who
bad.
are they paying?
It's bad. All right. So here we go. You got Jared Goff at 69 million. You got Taylor Decker at 21.3. Okay? So that's the left tackle.
Yeah.
That's fine. We can live with that if the other stuff works out. Ragnow's at 16.3. Didn't he just retire though? Hold on. I think over the cap might be lying to me, guys. Let me just check real quick. Hold on. I don't think they've updated. Yeah. Okay. Frank Ragnow retired.
Okay.
So we're at 8.
Okay. All right. Who else do we have on here? Are they paying Sewell yet?
So how much do you think Amon-Ra is going to hit the cap for in 2026?
Is he not still on his rookie deal?
Nope. He got the extension and the money kicks in. So they kind of moving in the soft this year at about 14. Okay. How much do you think it's going to hit for the next year?
Dang. I got no idea.
$33 million.
Seriously.
Yep.
Is
Aiden
that
Hut.
will that be his fourth year?
No. I think this is his fourth year. I think.
I thought
Hold
this
on.
was only going to be like his third year.
2021, 22, 2023, 2024. My bad. This is his fifth year.
This is his fifth year.
So
Okay,
this
that
is the
makes more
first year
sense.
on. This is his first year on the new contract,
Okay.
and they kept it lower at 13.9.
Okay. Are they paying Montgomery too?
Hold on. Let me run through this. So the next guy is Aiden Hutchinson's at 19.8 because that's his fifth year option, right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
that's still
Forgot
kind of
Hutch
a
is that
bargain
old.
for him. Like Hutch should probably, even with the injury, Hutch should be up in the 30 territory, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Penei Sewell's getting 28 in
Okay, they are paying
2026.
Sue already. Okay, yeah.
Aleem McNeil. I don't understand how this happens. This is definitely going to have to get flattened out because Aleem McNeil is getting $29 million against the cap in 2026.
Are you serious, man?
DJ Reed is getting 18 against the cap that year.
No way.
Yeah. And then I missed Jamison Williams. They picked up that option. He's making 15.5 against the cap that year.
Dang. Okay.
So unless
they're
if
paying
over
a
the cap
ton of
is
guys
really
that-
lying to me. Yeah.
No, they're paying way more guys, way more money than I had any barometer on.
So
That's crazy.
let me do the math real quick, and then I want you to guess how much cap space they have that year. So think about it for a second here. I'm doing the math to get Ragnow's cap out of there because over the cap's lying to me. All right, I got the rough number.
Like with Ragnar out of there, like maybe like 25 mil?
Of cap space?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're under by 38.
Wow.
They're in the hole $38 million.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I
don't
mean,
know
that's
how
what
they're gonna
happens
fix
when
that.
you add up all those contracts. Like,
Yeah.
it's bad.
That is
to be
bad.
clear, David Montgomery's making 8 that year. He's making
Okay.
8 this year.
Okay.
That's okay. It's not great for a running back for the running back market, but it's okay for a team impact player. But
I feel like they have some huge contracts that, again, like we talked about it at the QB position. At those other positions, I don't think a lot of those guys are really living up to the impact you want from those types of hits.
yeah, so I think they're going to have to really obviously they're going to have to do something to change all that. They can't go into the season with a negative cap next year, but they're going to have to really move some stuff around to make this stuff work. Jared Goff's going to get my guess is Jared Goff gets an extension next season that really kicks the can down the road on his money because I don't see how else you're going to do it. So maybe this conversation on him is a little premature because it's going to look different in a year. But yeah, I think from the perspective of, to get back on track, from the perspective of the money they decided to go out and give him and what they're trying to do with keeping all their stars around, I don't think it works. I don't think Goff's that kind of cool. I don't think Goff can lift the team enough to make this work. I think this is a situation where even with Mahomes, you're getting a little worried because you're going to be so star dependent, right? You're gonna struggle with the depth. You're gonna have to make uncomfortable choices with the CB2 and the wide receiver 3 and these pieces that aren't the big time playmakers, but they make a difference, right? They make an impact. And so yeah, I think giving Goff that much money was it was pushing the envelope a little bit too far, especially for a team that wants to play in a very quarterback protective scheme. They want to play with a really good O-line. They want to run the ball a ton. And you still need and they're still investing in the passing game players to make the passing game work on top of it, right? So they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, in my opinion. This. It's too much, and I get why you want to do that with a player like Jared Goff, but that means, in my opinion, you can't be paying him that much if that's how you feel about him.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I agree. Looking at what they're paying these other guys, that's a huge hit to be taking, and like you said, they're gonna have to fix it whether they want to or not. So we'll see if they're able to smooth that out. But they really kind of are this feels like they should be playing on a bunch of rookie contracts, and they're really not. So we'll see what they're able to do. But
yeah,
I feel like they're.
I don't
Yeah.
want to get on him too much about the $69 million cap hit. There's plenty of other quarterbacks that have cap hits out there like that. Like I'm not getting on the structure of the deal in terms of throwing that out there. That's fine. You can move it around, you can change it up, but it's how the money all works out when you see how much they're trying to pay other players that it's like
Yeah.
the money's going to come at some time.
Yeah.
You can keep making cheap years where you can compete for a little while, but eventually reality is going to come knocking, and you're either going to have to ask Jared Goff to compete with a much lesser supporting cast 2 years down the line, or you're going to have to tear the team down.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's keep this rolling with Baker Mayfield. This one's a little bit simpler, I think. So Baker Mayfield has been playing very cheap for the Bucs the past 2 years. Okay, so he was at 0.7% of the cap in 2023, right? So really nice deal. And then he was at 2.7% of the cap this past year, where he had this kind of explosive year, really good stats. Well, I've seen this being thrown a lot out that, you know, he's been basically, his numbers look very similar to Mahomes over the last 2 years. You know, I kind of wonder why. So then this year we've got 9.4% of the cap, right? So a little bit more of that what we're seeing as that mid-range quarterback contract, and then 13.2 the year after, and then back to 9.7. And all those years, you're kind of, well, I'm sorry, that 9.7 years of void year. I don't know if he's actually playing that year or not. I got to be honest, I'm not like perfectly educated on all the cap stuff. So I think he's not on the team that year, and that's just kick the can down the road year. So they're looking at these 2 years to compete, and then probably an extension next offseason. But yeah, what do you think about this deal?
Yeah, it's not bad. I've always been really high on Baker Mayfield. I always thought the Browns getting rid of them was more their problem than him being the problem. I think they just wanted something new. Like, I don't think Baker has ever held anyone back from success. And we've seen it. He's had a lot of success down in Tampa Bay. Granted, he's had a lot of help on offense. But I think he's a really good quarterback. We even saw what he did with the Rams on that little like 1 year stint, and even that like one big game where they had like that comeback, kind of that like legacy game that really probably helped him get that Buccaneers contract, to be honest. I think he's a good player. And I mean, these hits aren't huge. Like you said, all right, well, 0.7%. That's awesome if you can do that. 2.7, excellent. 9.4, 13.2, 9.7, not bad. I mean, they're going to be getting rid of Mike Evans soon, and they're probably going to end up either paying Godwin, maybe they end up paying McMillan. Bucky Irving's probably going to need an extension. But this seems to be leaving a good amount of room. I mean, you're in a pretty safe spot. 13.2 is maybe a little higher than you would want, but I mean, I definitely don't think it's overpaid. I think it's a pretty fair contract. I think it sets him up pretty well. Yeah, what do you say about it?
Yeah, and so I think I agree. I think I'm not really a big Baker Mayfield fan. Like I like Purdy more than him by a clear amount.
He's not Purdy level.
I struggle with Mayfield. I think he's got severe weaknesses that good defensive coordinators really take advantage of, and so I don't like playing with quarterbacks like that because it's just the road to playoff success is so tricky, and they seem to have a turnstile at offensive coordinator because they get these guys in that are making use of this talent, and then they get hired out immediately. So I don't know how much longer they can keep that going. But Jason Light has done a really good job with this team, I think. You look at the cap space numbers, so they've still got $26 million in cap space this year, right? So most of that, they're probably going to roll that over. So that's going to be nice. And then you've got $30 million as it stands next year as well. And then it opens up big time 129 in 2027 with that Baker void year on it. So you're in a healthy spot, I think, and you're in a good place. So if they can keep drafting well and hitting on these picks and things, like this is good. You've got the offensive infrastructure and everything. You've got I would like to see better. I don't know. The defense just feels like it's missing something. But this is a really well put together team, in my opinion. My only issue is just that I just don't think Baker's that good. And so I kind of think it's just not going to matter that you've done a decent deal with him and still managed to keep all your key big players around. You know, that's my worry.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but honestly, like, okay, Baker Mayfield's never going to be Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to be Brock Purdy either. But I think he's a pretty good player, and I think with enough supporting cast, and again, I'm not saying he needs two all-pro wide receivers. I'm just saying with some decent, competent guys out there and with some decent play calling, really just what you're going to need to win a championship anyway. I think he can be pretty good. Now, do I think that Baker Mayfield is going to be hoisting a Lombardi trophy in the next 3 years? Probably not. There's some pretty good teams out there, especially in the NFC, that I think are better. But I think that he can get out some decent success, and I think it buys him some time because I think Baker was always the Buccaneers were in this weird position where they went out and got Brady, and now they have Mayfield, and it still seems like they're kind of trying to figure out their future guy. So in my mind, it just buys them some time in a success window where they don't necessarily have to be terrible, but it's not like they're shelling out tons of money. They're keeping their young talent. It's not like they are having to off-put a lot of young talent because they're paying Baker. No, they're paying him a small enough price that they're developing a lot of these guys, and maybe their real QB of the future comes along because I don't think Baker really has that many years left.
Yeah, I think that's just my thing is that he's been in this situation the last 2 years too, with probably better offensive coordinators than you can count on having the next couple of years. And I look at that, and they didn't really do anything with it. They didn't really go anywhere. I I just think Baker kind of falls below the threshold of good enough to go win a Super Bowl and build a Super Bowl contending team. I just think he might be a little bit below that, and you can't make it work even if he's sitting on those really really low cap numbers, unless if they just kind of really shape this defense into a juggernaut or something and let him kind of really manage games and just make particular plays. But it's a really tough way to live. And so I think even though the Bucs are doing a tremendous job of maximizing this, I just don't think he's good enough is kind of my takeaway. So, all right, let's wrap this up. We kind of held these for last for the quarterbacks who are already on large contracts that we wanted to talk about. Burrow and Herbert. So these are guys we've both been very open on the podcast that they are elite quarterbacks. They play at the highest level. You can argue. Plenty of people will argue that Burrow or Herbert or both can push Josh Allen and Lamar, and even there's plenty of people arguing that they can play just as well as Patrick Mahomes or better. But we here at Save the Franchise, we kind of think these guys are elite, high-level quarterbacks. What do you think about these contracts respectively? Joe Burrow's hitting at about 16% every year, and Herbert's hitting at 13 this year and about 16 next year, and then 18.8 the year after that.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, like I'm not surprised. Like these are kind of the numbers that I expected to see from these guys, just knowing that the extensions that they've had and kind of their market value, both at that time and at the time now. Um, and I don't think they're terrible because again, we can go on and on about the ceiling that each of these guys have. I mean, Burrow's been to a Super Bowl, and Herbert as well. I think they both have a ceiling of being Super Bowl champions. There's nothing that I think that they are lacking that you say to win a Super Bowl, they need to master this. Some of these other quarterbacks were saying like, okay, maybe they need to fix this, maybe they need to add this. Like, I think both of these guys have proven that they just themselves have the talent to do it. It's just whether or not they can build the team for it because we've seen the Bengals be able to build the team for it, but we haven't seen that necessarily out of the Chargers. We've seen some flashes of talent, especially when they've had some different offensive pieces come in and out. Austin Eckler's played really good at times. Keenan Allen's played really good at times. Both of those guys are gone. They've completely reshaped the offense. They've brought in Lad McConkey last year, and we saw we saw Herbert kind of have some more of that flourishing that we saw when Allen was at the top of his game. And so I think both of these guys can start to get back to some success. We just need, like, for the Bengals, it's health, both Burrow and Chase. And the question is, when you're paying Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, is there enough for anyone else to go around, including Hendrickson on defense.
Right.
Whereas for the Chargers, they don't have a ton of huge contracts they're eating. I'm not sure what they threw to Najee Harris to bring him over.
Not much.
Um, yeah, not a lot. And so they
They've
have
been very
room that they can.
conservative with
They have.
the spending.
Exactly. And so I feel like the Chargers could continue to build around Herbert. And so they're in different spots. It's like I feel like the Bengals have their guys. It's like, can they stay healthy and is it good enough? And it's like the Chargers have plenty of space. Can they build it up within this window? So I do feel like Burrow or both contracts do make it difficult because with Burrow, there's not a lot of space left. And with Herbert, you're saying like, okay, unless we have like a lot of good rookies that hit. But again, I don't think that they have overpaid either of these guys because they are the types of guys that they don't need as much as those other guys need. They don't need as much as Kyler Murray's going to need, or that I think Jared Goff needs, or that I think Trevor Lawrence needs to be successful.
Yep.
They can succeed with less. So I do think that these contracts are pretty fair, but it's just clear that they're locked into it, and I think that's fair to do so because they're like, all right, these are our future guys, and this is what we're doing for the next 5-6 years.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much with you here. I think the key point to me is that you're paying them basically about where Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes are landing, right? And I think they're a little bit worse. I think they're a tier below Lamar and Allen, and I think those guys are a step below Mahomes. And so when I look at that, I think that's a case of, okay, if they're on equal footing going against each other, that doesn't mean you can't go beat Allen, Mahomes, Lamar, right? It means you're probably just not winning as many of the matchups as they're winning against you, right? So you're a little bit on the losing side of things, but that doesn't stop you from going and making a Super Bowl run, catching fire a little bit, making things work in the proper year. So that I think that's fine. It's perfectly okay. The big issue is that the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Bills happen to be creating value in better way, outside of the quarterback contract in better ways than the Chargers and the Bengals are currently doing. The Bengals are waiting to pay their star players and then paying them absurd top of the market deals, which I get. You want to keep Jamar Chase. Like I get it. I'm not saying they should have gotten rid of Jamar Chase or anything like that. Okay. But the Chiefs are creating a bunch of excess value by drafting really well. So are the Ravens. They do it every year. That's how they make things work, and they can sit in the back end of the first round and make this thing work for a decade, And so you need to be creating some value like those teams are creating value. You either need to draft a little bit better, you need to create. The Chiefs have the best defensive coordinator in the league, and he's not getting poached somehow. Like, that's extra value, right? Like, it's very helpful to have minor things like that helping you along. And so they need to find some of those things. And I'm not saying they can't. I think, argue that, damn it, I'm losing his name, but the defensive coordinator for the Chargers is creating, similar excess value to Spagnuolo, maybe not quite as much, but, doing that sort of thing. And providing value outside of the cap hit there. But they need to find those advantages, and they need to kind of either get to the same point that the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bills are at there, or they need to surpass them even with their non-cap hit based advantages in order to kind of make this work, in my opinion, right? So it's not about the quarterback contract, but I think so much as like, if you're going to live this way with a quarterback contract, you have to create the value elsewhere. The one thing I'd say is, if they had taken less money, if they had taken a chunk less money than Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow, then you could argue, okay, hey, now you don't have to do quite as much of those other things. You don't have to draft like the Chiefs managed to draft. You don't have to, create that excess value and hire the coordinator super well year over year. You can kind of beat it out in a different way. So it's a mix and match. It's kind of like you gain one thing, you lose another sort of thing. But these quarterback contracts, I think, work. They're all right. It's fine to pay these guys top of the market. It's not criminal or anything. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I feel like you really nailed that.
Let's go ahead and let's do a little bit of a lightning round with QBs who could land themselves these sorts of team-killing contracts that we're kind of looking at with maybe Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, maybe Kyler Murray. Who are the quarterbacks who could land there? It's kind of interesting. We really had this vision, or at least I had this vision of the podcast that I wanted to do this section and make this video more about this section than the other section. But we kind of looked into it and we were thinking, the quarterbacks that are in their third and fourth year kind of suck. And they're not really looking for extensions because outside of Purdy, who just got his, and so we talked about him. He's in his third year. Everybody else is kind of crap, and so we were struggling and kind of moving around there. And so this is not totally fair. These guys have only played 2 years, but these are guys we could kind of see. We kind of want to talk about it. Do you? So I'm gonna throw out one and talk about why I think it might land there, and then you want to talk about the other. Does that work?
Yeah.
Which one do you want?
Go with your pick first.
All right, I'll talk about Stroud. Okay, so Stroud's really interesting. He's won 2 playoff games already. Right, so you kind of send yourself up like, hey, I can go win playoff games, and I'm doing this with this crappy O-line. I'm making this work. I'm the reason your offense functions, which totally fair argument. I'm not saying it'd be wrong to argue that at the negotiation table, right? But if he plays another good season, has another playoff win, maybe a little bit supported by that defense quite a bit, just like this year, I don't think there's any reason that the market won't dictate that he's going to get a top end contract. And I think that's a little overzealous to let him go get paid like these guys. And he's going to get a contract that's adjusted for cap inflation, right? And so I think it's a little overzealous to go pay him like that, given that he doesn't have the the trump card, in my opinion, that Allen, Burrow, and Lamar and Herbert and those guys have, right? Like Mahomes plays has several elite trump cards that really let him get out of things with the arm angles. He's probably the best scrambler from a technical standpoint, right? That's something that no one else really can do. And then just the kind of magical understanding and instinct for the game he has. Allen's got his arm and his size and his movement, and he's become very good pre-snap as well, right? And then Burrow, just an innate understanding of when to throw the ball and where the space is in the pocket. And you just got these just truly easily seen cards that they can throw down and play, and I just don't know that Stroud has that. And maybe he'll develop it, right? 2 years in, more development could absolutely be coming. I'm totally with it. But I think I need to see him kind of develop some of that elite into his game in order to justify getting the contract I think he is very likely to get. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you really hit the nail on the head. It's like if he's starting to succeed, he's going to be a starting quarterback with a winnable future, and the market's going to dictate the contract that he's going to get, and whether he lives up to it or not, that's what people are going to be talking about in podcasts, I guess, 3 or 4 years from now.
Right. All right. You want to take the other guy? I think this case is a little bit easier to make.
Yeah, and my guy is really falls into that bucket of what we've been talking about, where it's like teams are scared to throw up their arms and say we missed it and move on, and so it's Bryce Young from the Panthers, and so it's a guy that has not had a ton of success. I think he definitely had more success last year than he did his first year, kind of the inverse of Stroud, but nowhere near Stroud's rookie year, and so there's a lot of people saying like, okay, how did that draft decision go? Because they were really high on Bryce Young, coming from Bama, great player, went with him, but we have not seen out of Bryce Young what you expect to see, or obviously what the Panthers were hoping for. But he kind of is their guy, and they don't really have a ton of other directions. They didn't take a QB this year. They're not throwing up their arms yet. And so if he has a couple more just good enough years where he's keeping them afloat, they might just give him the money that he's kind of owed. And it might not
kind
be
of that Trevor
massive...
Lawrence-esque contract, just
Exactly. It's going to be that Trevor Lawrence type feel where like he gets them to the playoffs, or maybe he wins a playoff game, and so like, oh, okay, we got to pay him this money or he's gonna leave and we're gonna have to restart. It really kind of reminds me of like a bad movie where it's like there's a couple that doesn't want to break up because, oh, if I break up then I'm gonna have to go another direction, I'll have to restart, I don't want to do that. And so I really feel like that's what they might end up in. I'm not super high on Bryce Young. I don't think he's going to be a super great NFL quarterback. I just don't think he has the metrics. I don't think he has the arm strength. Um, we'll see. I also just don't think the Panthers are going to be a good team in the next 10 years unless
Right.
they sell it to some much better ownership. So yeah. And I mean, outside of that, there really aren't a ton of other guys. You mentioned like the last 4 or 5 years, there hasn't been a lot. Like just looking at the 2021 draft class. All right, so we talked about Trevor Lawrence. You have Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, and then you get into guys like Kellen Mond, Davis Mills, Ian
Right.
Book, Sam Eilinger. So none of these guys really worked out. Mac Jones had a little bit of success with the Patriots, and Justin Fields has had even maybe a little bit more success with like the Bears and then the Steelers, but not guys that are anywhere near a contract extension. And then you fast forward to the next year, you got Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Bailey Zappi, who had like a game of success with the Patriots, Sam Howell, who's probably been the most promising for the Commanders, and then up in Seattle. And that's really Skylar Thompson, who the Dolphins brought in for a little bit, and then Brock Purdy. So mystery irrelevant there is really the only one that is relevant to talk about.
Yeah.
And then again, going forward to last year or 2 years ago, we mentioned Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, but outside of that, you have Anthony Richardson, who's still trying to prove himself, maybe as a comeback year. You got Will Levis, who again has not shown much except for some incredible memes. And then you got like Hendon Hooker, Jake Hanier, Stetson Bennett, Aiden O'Connell, not guys that are anywhere near any extensions. And then we have the guys from last year that we're really kind of maybe going to see coming up. Like Caleb Williams, can he prove himself? And then we've talked a lot about Jaden Daniels and Drake May. And then you guys got guys like J.J. McCarthy, who we've yet to see. You got Michael Penix, who might be coming around. I think Bo Nix is going to be a really good quarterback. So I feel like those are the guys that in a couple more years we're really going to be talking about. And then maybe Cam Ward, I think, is maybe the most promising from this most recent draft. So
Yeah.
outside of the two guys, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, we really highlighted. There's not a ton of talent that we've seen. So
We just need to
I'm
see
really
more from
interested
these
in,
new guys. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So,
So
all right. One last thing, and then we're gonna wrap this up. Let's just do it like this, okay? Out of the quarterback contracts, out of the contracts we went through, the large contracts that have been doled out. If you had a guy who's pretty much sitting right at 10, right at 10th best quarterback in the league, and he's kind of a driver, a guide of the team, but he doesn't really pull the team, right? If you had that type of guy, and you're deciding to keep him, you're not going to experience the quarterback wilderness or try to jump on that carousel, right? Which of these contracts that we talked about are you most do you think is most fitting? Do you think that type of guy should be making? Like, that's where it should fall.
I really thinking I'm thinking somewhere in like the Trevor Lawrence realm. I feel like that's kind of where you want to be. If you have a bunch of rookies, you can approach kind of that Matthew Stafford approach that we mentioned. But if you're not sure exactly what else you have on your team, but you kind of feel like you got your guy, you want to keep him in, I really feel like that Trevor Lawrence type contract works out pretty well.
Yeah, I think given where the market's at, you can't really get away with paying them less. But I think the way the Jaguars went around doing that was going to be my answer as well. Is the way they did it, the way they structured it, is what really matters. Okay, people are going to see that 55 APY and they're going to be all scared and they're not going to understand what it means, right? Well, when you go really look and break down the contract details, what that looks like and how they structured it in this scenario is light mid-range cap hits, ranging from about 6 to 11 for these 3 years, and leverage for Trevor Lawrence to dictate some of the terms of the next deal a little bit better than what it would be if he was just going to hit the market a year later. So I think that's where you want to land. Basically, 3-year period where they're on moderate cap hits and then you reevaluate and extend from there, right? I think that's a really nice place to land. I know Trevor Lawrence technically a little bit more like a 4-year deal with that $21 million dead cap, but that's right about where I'm pretty comfortable landing with him. So
Yeah. Nice.
yeah. All right, I think it was a really good episode. Had a good time talking with you. Tyler and I should be hitting some other topics, probably some player profiles tomorrow night. So hopefully, look at those to come out. If you're still watching this, we had a really good time. Please leave us a like and subscribe if you will. Hit us up in the comments section. I'm doing a pretty good job of replying to everybody who sends us in comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts on how much we hate your favorite quarterback or how much you like our compliments towards how your team handled the situation. So yeah, let us know. Have a great evening.